Can we negotiate with them? Can we do business with them?
I think it's an unfortunate reality that if they are the government, legitimate or otherwise, there is going to need to be some dialogue in some way with them. How we do that, having given up really a lot of our leverage, is going to be difficult. We don't have as much influence as we might wish, and the vacuum of us departing will be filled by others, not least Iran, China, and Russia. I think the focus for us right now as a nation must be to stand by those Afghans to whom we made promises that we would look after and support them. And the conversations I'm having daily with those who have been left behind, they are confused, they are scared, and very unclear as to what exactly the UK will be doing to support them. They're in possession of an email and letters saying, we will support you if you do still wish to leave Afghanistan. But how that's actually going to happen is completely unclear, and we must not lose the urgency and the speed in terms of trying to help them get out safely.
And that's one of the very big issues, isn't it? I mean, I don't know a single journalist in Britain who's not trying to help someone who they've been in contact with at some point, either someone who in their locality here in the UK who has a family member or others they're trying to help, or people we've spoken to ourselves that we in particular trying to help. A man we've called Samir. We know that Foreign Office emails going on are not just unanswered but unopened. Numerous people who are far better connected than me trying to get people to provide help and get their paperwork. How important is it that we get those people out and that we do help them? And can you talk to us as someone who was there and would have worked with some of these people who were trying to get out, who are most at risk, people, not just the translators, the interpreters, but those who also worked, setting up schools for girls, running the charities to try and help people. How important is it that we actually live up to that moral duty we have to those people?
Personally, I think it's critically important. It's not just, as you said, the interpreters or the soldiers or those with whom we partnered and worked over decades. It is the human rights activists, the journalists, the women's rights advocates who have spoken out, and by dint of doing that, they are now the most vulnerable and the most at risk. And while the Taliban's PR machine will talk of inclusivity and being welcoming to all groups and there'll be no retribution, unfortunately, it is not a homogenous group like a Western military unit, let's say. And orders are not being followed out in the provinces. We are already hearing very credible reports of reprisals, kidnappings, and executions of those trying to flee because they have these letters and guarantees from Western nations saying that they will be helped. It's just that the reality outside of Kabul is very different from perhaps what we're hearing and seeing on our screens at the moment.
But again, even what we're seeing and hearing on our screens has been very limited, hasn't it? Because so many people are reporting these door-to-door, Taliban knocking on the door and searching for people. We know that the Americans, and I think the British Embassy as well, particularly the Americans, left lists of those who'd helped them, biometric details, contact numbers, everything. I mean, it's an absolute travesty what they did there. And so that they've got these lists. Even if it's a question like, we can't trust the average Taliban fighter out in the provinces, can we even trust a single word that their spokesman in Doha has to say, let alone anyone else? The reality is this is an incredibly extremist group that has views which they believe are backed up by their God, where women don't have the sort of rights we consider to be normal here. Certainly gay people don't have the freedoms that we would expect here. Women are cowering at home, terrified to leave. Women are wearing burqas. People haven't gone out to work. We've got to run on the banks. People are in their homes absolutely petrified right now.
Yeah, we must be very careful not to be seduced by the rhetoric. It's just the reality on the ground is very different. And time will tell quite how extreme some of their actions will be. But let's remember that most of the Taliban, the youth of the Taliban that have now joined the government, never experienced Taliban, 1.0.
Yeah.
And many of them are sort of vying or fighting for the heroic sort of name or the reputation of being more extreme or more devout than others. And that is really worrying, because that is something we can very unlikely control or even see from where we're sitting back here. So any assurances politically from that government to the UN or others is going to be extremely difficult for us to either verify or influence on the ground.
Well, that's the thing. Again, A, verifying it, and B, influencing it. And this is the crucial thing in terms of influencing. We're talking about, UN motions and resolutions and asking the neighbouring countries like Pakistan, China, Russia and Iran to provide a moderating influence. I mean, laughable statements in themselves, it would seem. But realistically, is the Taliban so desperate to keep international trade going, to keep the Kabul airport runway open, to get international diplomatic recognition, and get the money out of those foreign banks? Is it really so desperate that it will completely change its spots?
I mean, I said I'm not a politician or a diplomat per se, so I think others can probably comment with more authority on that. I think what I'm focused on, and many of my friends who are trying to help those journalists, women's rights activists, interpreters, and others, is that we need to think very, very quickly about those practical steps we can put in place to support them, because many of these people who are the most vulnerable and at risk of being killed or executed because of their ties to the UK and other Western countries, they need help right now to know, what do they do? Where do they try and go? Because they cannot go home. The Taliban have already been to their houses and made it clear that they will be killed if they return, and family members are being punished, tortured, or executed because some of them might have already escaped, and they're just frustrated